Thank you so much, Bryan, for being here.
Thank you.
Can you provide a brief overview of your background and your journey in developing conversational AI solutions?
Oh, the first encounter I had with conversational AI was in high school. I
Okay.
was in a high school program that allowed me access to a computer lab at IBM.
Hmm.
I grew up where IBM started,
Okay.
and my first encounter was with Eliza, the probably one of the first chatbots ever.
Mhm.
And Eliza um, really inspired me to go into psychology and counseling.
Okay.
So, after, high school, I went into college and studied psych and philosophy, and then, I was very interested in artificial intelligence, but at that time, I'm an old geezer, there was mostly theoretical positions on artificial intelligence.
Right.
And so, after that, I had a good buddy in this we were in this program, this psych and philosophy program, and we both decided that it just wasn't ready yet, and we probably would have a hard time making a living unless we were, researchers or teachers, and that's not we wanted to be practitioners.
Mm.
So then I trained, for several more years and became a licensed professional counselor. For about 10 years, I practiced doing family counseling and therapy.
Mhm.
And after around the time that some friends approached me about some new things on the internet and multimedia, um, there were some changes going on in the healthcare system in the United States, and even currently, we have a mental health. It's a travesty, a mental health epidemic
Right.
here in the States. And at that time, the insurance companies were clamping down and reducing mental health benefits. And my business, I had 2 offices and a radio show in Atlanta. I was doing really good, but the way that things went, it was concerning. And so I made a career change and I began to do multimedia. In fact, I even programmed my own billing software as a therapist. I kept up with my coding skills. And I became the technical director of a boutique in Atlanta that served Cartoon Network and Arista Records and Coca Cola. And we uh, we did some pretty high flying work, corporate work, NASCAR, and then the internet boom, the first one, had a big crash,
Mhm.
and my team kind of got scattered, and I got a record deal. So I moved to New York, with my wife. My wife was all up for it. She was teaching in, New York City schools. We lived in Brooklyn, and I made a couple of records.
Okay.
And then during that time, because you're not there was mostly production work. I wasn't a touring musician. I was a producer guy. I was a technical person and an engineer. Um, and then I got involved with Second Life. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a virtual world. And I started to make virtual appliances for avatars in that world, and I sold a ton of katanas. I
Okay.
I mean, if you've seen Ready Player One, I was the guy who made all their stuff.
Okay.
So we made cars and clothes and tattoos for avatars and all kinds of things,
Mm.
um, and I got a lot of neat opportunities from that from a 3D company in Atlanta, and and that was pretty good for a while, and then I just got burned out on all the tech because I was sitting in front of a computer all the time. I was always just kind of alone, and I wanted to get out of my shell, and, my wife's like, "You need to go do something," and it was frustrating, and it's not that I wasn't making money because I was, but I just needed a change. So I went to work for the parks department. This is a strange story, but I did community management. I got back to my roots a little bit as a mental health counselor. And I did community management, and we did street tree care, and we taught in the public schools in New York City,
Mhm.
and we taught ecology and recycling to these kids, and we got thousands of people out to do coastal remediation and to plant trees in the parks department. And I knew that there were some problems with the environment in the United States. The issue of climate change was like a football team's, like, if are you on the red team or the blue team? And it was a matter of opinion. And I
Mm.
knew that wasn't right, sustainability program, and to study more because I knew I there's lots of things I didn't know. And I'm 20 years out from my graduate work, and I was like, I need to get more. And so I bumped into a professor, Jonathan Miles from James Madison University, who kept calling me back. And he kept calling me back. He says, "Bryan, when are you coming to Malta? When are you coming to Malta, Bryan?" And I was still working in the Parks Department. I don't know, Jonathan, what's a Malta? I don't know what Malta is. And so we started to look at pictures, and my wife took one look, at this beautiful beach, and she's like, "I want to go there." And Marianne was the one who broke the ice there, and we made plans, and we went to Malta, and she got a job there teaching as an artist in a private school there, and I began a double master's in sustainability and applied technology,
Okay.
and I discovered data science. Like, I knew how to program, but I didn't really understand. I didn't. Data science was kind of a brand new thing. This is 5, 6 years ago, I guess, and um, and we began to really, really learn, that we can make a lot of predictions and make a lot of understanding out of data. And as a result of understanding data science, I kind of got on this tip about metadata. It's like the data between data. It was kind of interesting. And you can see metadata, for instance, when you take a photo, like
Mm.
it tracks your location and what's in the photo and who the people are in it. And that was super interesting to me. And I wanted to know more about metadata. And I had some ideas about how that could be monetized. And so one day on a lark, after I'd finished my program, um, I decided to go to a Techstars event,
Mm.
and I pitched these ideas about metadata and perhaps using artificial intelligence to analyze metadata and to monetize it. And I was particularly focused at that time on esports. It's like, this is kind of interesting. What can we do with esports and metadata? And we won this Techstars event.
So when was
And what?
when was
When was this?
yeah.
2017.
Oh,
2017.
okay.
So I had a team of a bunch of kids, but they didn't really understand what startups were, and they were just there for fun on the weekend, sort of. And they hung around for a little while, but I was really like a dog with a bone. Whenever I get an idea, and they don't give me any encouragement because I'll just keep on with the thing.
Mm.
So in 2017, Ninja Mobile was started by a lawyer, Max Ganato. He did that pro bono, and he's like, "This is a great idea. You need to have a company here." And so that's how Ninja Mobile starts. After 2017 until COVID, I was working with IBM because those were my roots, and I was like, I want to do something with IBM. And I saw Watson, and I really didn't like the interface
Mm.
for Watson. I thought it was difficult to build a chatbot in Watson unless you were a programmer, and I wanted to make it accessible.
Mm.
And so, I there were some things about IBM that I really thought were wonderful. They spin up entire enterprise software packages and then release them as open source. One example of that is Hyperledger, which now Linux manages, and then Node-RED. Because I'm a strong proponent of Node-RED for education, but for all kinds of other reasons.
Mm.
That I thought there was a lead there that we could build a conversational platform utilizing Node-RED, and we have. So we've built our MVP to address conversational AI. What I wanted to tell you was, we won the biggest hackathon in the world, and that's how my team came together now. The team of Mike and Estefania and Yaroslava. Out in the world, there are 20,000 people who were a part of this thing, 5,000 teams, and we won in education and family life. And I teamed up with uh, Jerry Sade at the Malta College of Arts and Science and Technology. And they researched our plans and our platform actually in live classroom use.
Okay.
And
The best feedback that you can get from teaching a live class.
that's right. That's right. So he and I built the platform, and then he worked with another professor there at MCAST, and they did a study and did a paper. You can find that paper on our website about the efficacy of the use of conversational AI for classroom use. Now, this particular platform, I wanted to go for this ease of use thing, and I wanted it to be super easy to program. So we were approached by a large language model a couple of years ago, a medical model, and I just felt concerned about the accuracy. The guy said to me, Bryan, people prefer talking to this AI to doctors, and it's right 80% of the time.
Hmm.
I thought to
You're
myself,
talking.
okay, number one, sometimes I don't want to like my doctor. He's going to bring me bad news. He's not going to always talk to me nicely, and he's not going to tell me what I want to hear. So that was the first thing that
Hmm.
cued me. And then the second part was the accuracy. Now I know that they've increased accuracy, but still, any hallucinations are bad hallucinations. We don't want your doctor under any circumstances to hallucinate an answer to you. And if he's doing that, then he shouldn't be in practice. And the same, I would say, for an LLM. An LLM should not be your doctor, and you shouldn't think of it ever. So our platform it can leverage generative AI to generate dialogues, but all of our dialogues are human reviewed. So all you need is a list of questions and answers.
Hmm.
Q&A has emerged in conversational AI the last few years as an actual discipline.
True.
And so as a result of that emergence of that study, we're able to match questions and answers heuristically and statistically make an analysis of those, and then match the user's utterance and their intent with an answer, and that answer is going to be definitive. It's not generated on the fly in the moment, but it's generated previously and reviewed and
Hmm.
then matched to the user's utterance. Rather than in generative AI, you don't know necessarily what it's going to say. There's usually a random seed in the equation.
Hmm.
Depending on how you phrase the question, there's a whole multiplicity of factors that generate that answer. And the accuracy of an LLM versus a system that gives you a human reviewed dialogue is incomparable. You can't even touch it.
First of all, you have a very, very interesting trajectory, starting from computer science to psychology and then back to it's like you have a very, like a full circle.
It is. It
And
is. Yeah.
so I have a question about the last point that you mentioned,
Sure.
that these are definitive answers and not just generated on the fly. So how do you make sure that those answers addresses a wide variety of questions?
So we're not making LLMs for everything, right? I think that's a bad. I think that's a bad undertaking. It made things extremely popular,
Hmm.
and they certainly do give you innovative answers, and many times even useful. I'm not saying that they're not LLMs are not useful. I'm just saying don't use them as a doctor or a teacher.
True.
If you have a licensed professional who has learned this thing over years of study and training and been mentored by other human beings, we have a setup in our culture and society to protect people from egregious, leveraging of that position, because that's a position of authority and trust. We don't want to supplant that position that we've established through the rule of law over hundreds of years by this emergent conversational appliance. When you bring this matter up, what we want to have is somebody who is very knowledgeable about that vertical
Hmm.
answer those questions.
Hmm.
Or they can review those questions. Somebody else can generate the answers, but we always want a human directly supervising those dialogues. And
Hmm.
that's what we do. So the answers are intended to be vertical, very specific, and to the point. Now, do we have all the answers about this development that we? No, we don't have billions of dollars. We're a pre-seed startup. We have some research. We've won some notable awards. We're on our feet. We've got some great opportunities we're facing, but we're certainly not funded to the level of some of these stratospheric enterprises.
Makes sense. And you really want this trust factor while dealing with especially education and healthcare
Uh,
because
br- uh, uh,
everybody
sorry, I'm babbling. I'm so passionate. Yes.
that's fine. I can see that and I'm loving it. But
Oh, I'm
my
glad.
question is that uh no, it's not a question. What I'm trying to say is that as even me as a person, and I know that a lot of people would want that trust factor while dealing with an AI that is in the healthcare domain, especially healthcare, because for edtech, you get a lot of content out there, a lot of help, but for healthcare, it is very difficult. You want something that you can trust on. So I
Absolutely.
you're
Kamal,
going
you're absolutely
the
right.
right direction.
So recently I pitched a hospital not to do their diagnosis, not to do their actual patient care, not to do their triage, not to do their active patient reviews, but merely to provide FAQ. So if you can relieve the desk staff of ordinary logistical questions that happen on a daily basis, you can reduce costs, in those clinics and hospitals and doctor offices, incredibly. And
And you
so we go ahead.
ensure like a full-time availability. You can ensure that the answers will be available at all times.
Yes, and they're the right answers.
Right,
So.
right, right. Okay. And I'm wondering what kind of challenges have you faced? Can you tell me about like some specific challenges that you had to face while building or reaching out to people with Ninja Moba?
So we've had amazing luck. I mean, the good things are, well, how do you get out there? And I can definitively say F6S in terms of, you're asking about ecosystem and you're building ecosystems for startups. So F6S has been in just a great help for us. We've gotten access to travel through Europe and many tech conferences and meeting all kinds of amazing people, and it's really given us a leg up. So I recommend that platform. And but the issues that we have faced is, well, okay, so I've got mobility. I had to kind of scramble to try and find out, well, how do I get hosting? And believe it or not, there's awesome startup opportunities at most of the large tech companies for early credits on hosting. So we've gotten into the AWS accelerator, and we've also been accelerated by IBM. And in both of those cases, we were supported by other NGOs and found relief and for our credits for building our software. So I'd really encourage looking for accelerators that offer that kind of support for your IT expenses.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, sounds good. And now we've talked about AI, and there's just so much about buzz. I wouldn't say buzz. It is actually it has been put into practice for for quite some time now. Uh, how do you deal with the competition?
Well, I don't.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
short
I
and sweet.
don't. I can't think about. I can't think about the people running next to me. Um, they all have their own trajectory. Many people are focused on the quickest way to monetize. We've been doing conversational AI for 5 years, and we've talked to a lot of people in Europe, and we have a very specific race that we're running, and I don't see very many other folks in the same race. We offer a conversational AI with accuracy, with data provenance, so you can track where this information comes from and who said these things and who approved this. With privacy, we can we can apply our conversational AI on premise, so it's super light. It doesn't burn up a lot of CPU. It doesn't have the same environmental footprint that a large language model has. So it can be deployed in a federated manner so that everybody has their own data governance. When you ask me, well, how do you deal with competition? The CEO of NVIDIA just this past week endorsed local governance in the distribution of AI. I've been talking about that for the last 4 years. So when people start to ask me, well, what about competition? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Are you going to take this message? Is this an interesting thing? Does this make sense to you? Is this logical, precise, and accurate? Those are the questions you need to ask when you're wanting to deploy AI.
Sounds very interesting. Okay, so I want to understand more about how it works. So I'll give you an example. So let's say that I am working in EdTech, right? I'm teaching a class, let's say it's seventh graders, right? So
Nice.
how would Ninja Moba be able to help me out?
Sure. So we can deploy on. I don't know if I've got a little one around here. So here we go. So we can deploy on local devices. So this little guy
Okay,
is a Raspberry Pi,
okay,
and this is what we did the study on. I don't know. It's a single board computer.
yes.
We're probably going to graduate to NVIDIA single boards,
Mhm.
but what we have been doing had not been GPU intensive necessarily. It's CPU intensive.
Mm,
It's a matching program. So I'm going to ask you as a teacher, what is your lesson plan for that day?
mm,
And what questions and answers do you want to pose to your students
mm,
um, for your rubric? So you make a list of questions and answers. You could generate them even with an LLM, but make sure you review them for accuracy. But once you have that list of questions and answers in that body of knowledge that you are wanting to present to your students, then you can deploy locally on one of those to a web page in that classroom.
okay.
So kids can get a chatbot that closely held so that they don't have to even necessarily um, use the infrastructure of the school. You could each teacher could conceivably have their own bot. We want to deploy in institutions
Mm,
behind their firewall on the premise of that campus. And so if you're a teacher, you could talk to us. I mean, we're still early enough to build relationships with individual teachers, but our goal is to scale. And
institute.
so the best situation is to say, hey, go to your institution and say, I want a chatbot in my classroom, and I think these are the guys to to put one there, and then we can supply your whole school rather than just one teacher.
Okay, okay. I see how it works now. Um, and then do the questions have to be very definitive? So let's say that I have a question very specific, and how do the students interact with it? Do the students have to ask that very same question?
No, it's a Bayesian analysis. It's a nearby. It's fuzzy logic. So you
Mm,
don't have to exactly say those same that's the exact string of words that matches with that answer. It's close enough by. And we usually when you program a dialogue like this, you want to put in a few different ways of asking that question. Um, so that you'll be assured that the kids will be matched. This is not actually um, strangely enough, uh, The technology is not so important. We've
Hmm.
had chatbots for years that could do this. The issue is how do we apply these things in, and it's the metadata issue. How do I get this into a classroom? How do I go behind a firewall? How do I be trusted in this environment? How do we know that these answers are going to be correct? Those are different questions than what's your software.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, I see how you're looking at this, and I can see that. Okay. And how have you been able to measure the ROI?
Well, so there's lots of studies on the efficacy of using chatbots and scaling your answers. And the 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 thing I'd say that would increase ROI when you do deploy a chatbot is from a story I had. We won EU versus virus, and as a result, we were interviewing several universities. And one of the universities said, "Oh, we made a chatbot, but it didn't work." I
Mm,
said, "What didn't work about it? Why didn't that work?" The question wasn't the software. It was a cool little app that you could talk to. The question was there was a university stamp on that app that was kind of dry. It was the emblem of the university, and there was no adoption program in that school for uptake. So the kids didn't know to use the thing, and it looked kind of boring.
mm,
When we won the EU versus virus, we had this little bug that looked like COVID that one of our illustrators drew. And every one of those screens, it was even static. He's a cute little bug, smiley, and we gave him a name. His name was Yope.
mm, mm,
And Yop or Yope, depending if you're Spanish or English, talked. And so I did a little voice like this. Hi, I'm Yope. I'm free. And when we did that and we made engagement and made it interesting and used some of the things that like a Cartoon Network might do to promote those the bot, we won this great big contest. Well, you can't just stick a institutional emblem on a chatbot and put it in the app store and expect people to use it, is my point.
mm. And so when you do go out, when someone says that I need this product, so do you have to, or does someone have to be present
Oh,
there
so
in the
so do
stall?
we
Or
need this product? So our plan is to have an SaaS. We're at the point where we can automate the purchase of these things. We're taking early signers, people we have a waiting list. Um, but the but the plan is to also scale. So you might just want a bot that just answers questions. You
Mm,
upload your list of questions and answers, thing works for you. Put it on your website in an iframe. Boom, done. Or you might want to have a deployment. And we have an IDE backend that'll wire into your database if you want it to get kids grades, or you want to get information about class reports, or you want to get teacher lists, or you want to look up your teacher's email address.
mm,
We can offer that kind of data access and capability in the bot. That takes a little bit of programming, but it's super easy because we've made it easy
mm.
in our plan is for scaling.
Okay, so my next question is, um, have you faced any issues regarding ensuring safety or privacy and ethics?
So hopefully, by God's grace, we're we're practicing ethically. When the EU came up with this plan for um, for AI safety and for concerns about AI, we're already compliant. I mean, we're focused and are born out of academic institutions. Y- I, I had 10 years of practice as a therapist, as a licensed counselor. Our ethics are built into our DNA as people. Um, but I just mentioned we have data provenance. We can deploy locally. You can review every single question and answer, and we require that a human be in the loop. And I won't deploy unless there's experts involved with the project. So
Right. So there's still a lot of human interaction and intervention required, and it's enabled. So I think it,
Agree.
yeah, okay, it's good. And looking ahead, how do you see conversational AI evolving in the next few years, especially in terms of its potential to drive cultural change and promote sustainability?
I'm super thrilled you asked that. My dissertation from our sustainability master's program was specifically in sustainability communications.
Mhm.
There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. And I think, you asked us, where is AI going? And we're reaching a tipping point in terms of people's understanding of conversational AI. 3, 4 years ago, if I talked about conversational AI, people would just squint at me. And I'd say, like Siri on your phone. Oh,
Mm.
but still, the lights don't really work going on. And now most people kind of go, "Oh, I know what that is," because it's gotten into our culture. We've reached a tipping point in culture. Now, the issue is not so much the technology, as I said, it's how do we deploy this with efficacy, with privacy, with human dignity, and respecting culture.
That sounds wonderful, right? And okay, and as someone who actively explores various concepts and prototypes, what emerging technologies or trends in AI are you particularly excited about? And
Oh, oh, God. You got me going on that
how
one.
do you envision to integrate them in your work?
Recently, I was approached by a company that's focused on robotics, and
Okay.
so because we can be self-contained and run, and supercomputers have sped up so much since I was in college and said, "Bah, AI." What now? We even on a local device, I showed you the thing can run, but with new single board computers, we can make the brains. We have the software to make the brains of automatons of robotic bodies. So
Mm.
being the brain or the communication device and UX for a robot is pretty much an exciting thing for me.
And do you have any plans on integrating it with your work?
We've been recently approached by a robotics startup.
Okay, okay. So that I can see that it is very exciting for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we end this conversation, there is a couple of things that I would like to ask you today. What do you hope listeners or viewers take away regarding the intersection of AI, social impact, and sustainability?
Focus on how to automate existing science around the environment and evaluate questions that you have about remediation um, and restoration with LLMs in mind. We can really quickly do two things. We can evaluate a plan with an LLM that's tuned for environmental procedure. Those kinds of standards are already in place. It's pretty clear what we need to do in order to remediate. And it's not only carbon reduction as the single factor to do that. Creating ecosystems, there's a multiplicity, a wicked interventions need to be done that don't only keep the carbon issue in mind, but rather restoring animal systems, plant, our entire environment. So when you do that, which is a super complex, not an easy task, you can source some of that ideation. Don't rely on the LLM. Look at it as kind of a place to bounce your ideas and think and make sure that when you do that, there are now sciencey LLMs, more sciencey LLMs. They still hallucinate, but if you're careful and you think about the answers that you get back, you can leverage those things. It's not a cheat sheet. It's a kick in the butt to sort through your ideas and to get some quick validity. Always stay with your peers. Anything that you come up with, talk to your peers. And the second part of that is that you can scale your plans and communicate with an LLM or with a chatbot like we're doing, you can scale those ideations and those efforts that you're trying to make by writing up that plan and getting a clarity, have a written agenda by sorting out, well, what is this going to cost us actually? Where might I get these funds? You want to ask those kind of questions, but you also want to push out the idea so that it can get as far and wide as it possibly can. So first, get validity from your peers and sorting those things out through um, scientific review, and then secondly, you can disseminate your message with conversational AI.
It's really interesting that you're, I talked with Lionel Lodge, founder of Sync Lodge. uh, That was the first podcast. And he gave pretty much the same advice that do not be afraid to take help. And
Right.
you should know when to take the help. Okay, and do you have any piece of advice for young entrepreneurs, young as in early stage entrepreneurs?
Understanding the problem that you're solving. Let me put it this way: throughout my career, I have had a hard time with lean startup methodology.
Okay.
I think it yields unintended consequences in terms of resource use, and that it's focused mostly on monetization, which really it's people, planet, and profit. so, so young entrepreneurs, you want to know, you do want to have validity. You do want to, you don't want to be a technology looking for a problem, but you don't want to focus the entire effort on whether or not money will come. There's a lot of money, and if you have a good answer for a problem that people have, that's going to find its way into the marketplace. That's my humble opinion.
That is a really good piece of advice. I personally love it, and I'm sure that the audience is going to love it too. And I hope that they listen to your message and and follow it. It was so
Time
much
to talk
fun talking with
all.
you. It was so much fun talking. Your passion, it kind of, I can see it through, and I can hear it. I can hear your passion, and it is. I'm sure that the listeners would find it inspirational,
I hope so.
really. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights today. It's been a pleasure talking with you and learning about your work and Ninja Moba and your vision for the future of conversational AI.
Thank you, Camille.